Well, welcome to Prophetic Table Talk. It's like the ferocious February that Amanda Grace has been talking about and warning us about, and it's exciting to be right in the middle of it instead of anywhere else. This is the best place to be. So we're going to start talking out the updates, and the first thing is from 2/9 of this month. Ghislaine Maxwell invokes the Fifth Amendment in a closed-door oversight house deposition. Now, I really looked into this because the deposition is when they're asking her questions, and she kept on she invoked the Fifth Amendment. Okay, so what is it that she's really doing? Okay, one of the things that is a possibility, if she went and told the truth, it could put her in jail a lot faster. Okay, so she chose to be silent. So this should be telling us that there is more to the story than has been released. Okay, so Congress questioned her knowing she had pleaded the fifth. Okay, and that is to me very important. Okay, because they knew this. So how does it affect the Epstein investigation? Okay, Congress questioned her anyway. They wanted to create a public record. So Congress is making a record of what she wouldn't say to raise public awareness. They mapping out what she's hiding, and that's real important because they're keeping up with what she's not saying. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
she's just simply saying invoking the fifth, and that's it. And she's protecting herself against discrimination. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so this is why she would do this. I thought this was very interesting. Does anybody want to add something to that? Okay. Okay, we're going to get into this some more. So, also, Buckingham Palace says that King Charles III will, if approached, support police if they claim related to his brother Andrew Windsor and his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So, Charles is going, the king himself is going to support the police. That's what he promises.
Yeah, that's what he promises, because if you pay attention to the way that they set these things up, it's they keep everything at arm's length. So you're dealing with Andrew Windsor being at arm's length, but yet in reality he was the connection man for the whole royal family. He was the one that handled all their dirty laundry. And of course, he's at arm's length, so he's the one that will probably end up taking the fall for it. And that'll
They're going
keep
to
him
tell on him, in
clean.
other words.
Yeah, they're going to let him be the one that takes the fall for it, and they'll stay clean and they'll stay in power. I mean, that's just how that works. It's the same thing with corporations and CEOs, making sure that they have other people to do the dirty work so that they keep their noses clean. Same thing.
Okay, everybody's trying to keep their nose clean, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And on 2/9, we also have Japan's first female prime minister. I think her last name is pronounced Takaichi.
Okay. Sane Takaichi.
Thank you. Okay. She brought the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, which is known as the LBP, the biggest electoral victory in the 71-year history of that party, fueling her ambition to pursue her political agenda. Okay, which she herself said could split public opinion. So, what is really doing this? Because right now she has proven she's got the support of the people, but she's revisiting Japan's constitution. She's restoring traditional values. She's standing up to China and Korea, which is really interesting, but she's strengthening Japan's ties with the U.S.
Yes, she is. And that also has a lot to do with the fact that I know it says Liberal Democrat Party, but you have to understand our definition of liberal and different countries' definitions of liberal are actually very different. So when you read that, understand that fact, because she is actually ultra conservative, and to the point that part of her campaign lead is she's going to basically nullify and stop all the same-sex marriages. and she's going to restore family traditions as part of her campaign promise.
Wow.
Wow. This sounds like
The-
Japan has a Trump in the making.
It sounds like that she's going to be their Trump. You're exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But one of the things and statements I found that she makes Japan feel safe and stable, which I
Mm-hmm.
thought was a very interesting statement about her. So that really is taking her success is going to shift Japan. And the voters of Japan are also saying yes to what Trump is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they want
Very
the
much
same
so.
thing. Wow. Okay. So also on 2/9, Turning Point USA hosted its All American halftime show as an alternative to Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl. Okay. It featured Kid Rock, Bradley Gilbert, Lee Price, and Gabby Barrett. Anybody
Yeah,
want to comment there?
I
I'll comment
watched it.
there.
I
I watched
watched it.
both of them. Um, while it was good, it was more. It was not that as much of a show as it was just a concert, a televised concert. Um, I've heard good and bad reviews on it. Basically, Bad Bunny had a show, but he was an absolute horrible performer,
Mm-hmm.
and the the fact that Turning Point did a really good thing. Absolutely, I agree with that 1,000,000%. But the only person that took that stage that was actually a true showman was Kid Rock,
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
and Kid Rock knows how to put on a show, but that comes from experience. That comes from the fact that before he turned his life around, he made his money from being a showman,
Mm-hmm.
and he put on a show,
Well,
and
and two, that
that's
he
what.
sent a message, Shane. He sent a
Yes.
message. He sent a strong message about the Lord Jesus Christ because, he came out
Yeah.
rocking and doing his thing. And then they had the violin and the whatever that other instrument was playing. And he
Hmm.
really showed there was a message in that, a spiritual message of transformation.
Yes,
And
it
then he came
was.
out with
I
that last
agree.
song that he sang with, and he came out. When they introduced him, the first time was Kid Rock. The second time was his biological name,
Yes,
and so I thought it was very unique. That part was very unique.
it really was. And that part of that entire thing was the actual show. You know, to me, they should have gave the entire halftime show to Kid Rock.
Yep,
it would
I agree.
it would have been phenomenal, and they could have had guests come in and be a part of the
I
show with
agree.
him as far as Brantley Gilbert. Now Brantley Gilbert does put on a show. He
Just
puts on a
kidding.
serious show. But but if they would have had Brantley Gilbert and Lee Bryce and them come in as guests and Kid
Mm-hmm.
Rock kind of running the entire show, that would have been the ultimate thing. I think being their first attempt, just like we do when we do a first attempt, it was absolutely phenomenal for their first
Mm-hmm.
attempt. I think
I can
next
agree
year
with
I'm
that.
looking. I would expect them to do it again next year, and I would expect something completely, completely, blow the top off, amazing, because they're getting feedback and they'll make the changes.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
I like that. I agree. Okay. Also on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump told the N12 is an Israeli broadcasting network, just like our news
hmm,
channels, that the United States is ready to attack Iran in case negotiations with the Islamic Republic fail. And he was considering sending a second aircraft carrier to the Middle East, which he's already done since Tuesday. He's ordered the
hmm,
USS Gerald Ford to go to the Caribbean. From the Caribbean to the Middle East. It hasn't arrived, but it's en route. Okay. And this is a nuclear uh, carrier. which I think is very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. The USS Abraham Lincoln is already there. So it's a very strong show of force that's being put out there that President Trump is making a key statement about whatever's going on and whatever he plans to do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he went on to say either we'll make a deal or we'll have to do something very tough at the last minute, Trump told N12. He also warned that the U.S. has an armada that is heading there and another one might be going. Okay. So on Well, I'll go to 211 while we're in that same vein. And President Trump kicked off his meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House on Wednesday as the Middle East remains uneasy over the possible of attack of America on Iran. So after nearly 3 hours of talk, there was no definite agreement reached on how to handle the negotiations with Iran, especially over its nuclear program, but Trump insisted the U.S. should keep pursuing talks with Tehran, while Netanyahu pushed for tougher conditions addressing the missiles and the regional threats. So they agreed to keep working. Netanyahu announced that he did join Trump's peace board during this time in a diplomatic framework tied, excuse me, to the Gaza ceasefire. Anybody want to say any more on that?
Not other than the fact that Trump means business with this. Um, he understands who he's playing with, and he knows he's playing with fire with these people. So he's willing to fight fire with fire at this point. Um, yeah. So there's also been a submarine that the U.S. has mobilized there as well. That's nuclear. That actually has nuclear firepower. So he's not playing.
Okay, well, that's definitely, he hadn't played at all, but he's making a statement about who the United States is.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so on 210, the White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett said on CNBC that the U.S. economic growth is accelerating sharply, projecting around 4% GDP growth, and through the end of the
Mm-hmm.
year, a 3% average growth in 2026. Okay.
Yeah, and I
So,
think those numbers are conservative, to be absolutely honest with you, because what we're being currently set up with economically, I think those are very conservative numbers. And the reason they put those numbers out is basically the same way you do a business deal, you underpromise and overdeliver. So they're not showing everything that they're expecting. They're trying to underpromise, and then if they overdeliver, then what's going to happen to the markets is when they do overdeliver, is you will have investments pour in like crazy.
yeah, that's awesome. I think the economy is definitely growing. Okay,
Kind of.
211.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
No, go right ahead. Go
Go
right
ahead.
ahead. Because I was gonna the 211 with the Pam Bondi thing is kind of they're doing the same thing with it too. They're
Okay.
it's kind of
Okay,
interesting.
let's go there. So, Attorney
Mm-hmm.
General Pam Bondi went toe to toe with lawmakers in a heated hearing as the country's top lawyers appeared before the House Judiciary Committee for the first time since taking office. At least 11 victims of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein were in the audience for the hearing, and they were repeatedly referenced by lawmakers. At one point, a representative from Washington State asked the victims to raise their hands if they have not met with Trump's Department of Justice, and each of them did. The moment stood in contrast to a pledge by Bondi earlier in the hearing to bring the full weight of the department behind any additional cases of abuse, telling the hearing, the FBI is waiting to hear from you. I want you to know that any accusations of criminal wrongdoing will be taken seriously and investigated. In one particular exchange, Bondi refuted a request from the representative from Washington State to turn around and address the 11 victims who said they had not met with the department and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through. The request ignited a shouting match between the two women as Bondi pushed back and replied that she wasn't going to get in the gutter with these theatrics, while the representative from Washington State argued Bondi was ignoring the victims.
Okay. So one of the things that Pam said in the middle of this meeting as well is that she said if all the names of the Epstein perpetrators were actually released, the entire system would come crashing down. And she wasn't just talking political, she's talking economical as well. Okay. So when she's talking about that, in the midst of this, they're holding back these records and they finally release them. But if you pay attention to the way that they were released, there is your key. You have, for instance, they were released in an unredacted form on a computer where the congressmen and congresswomen could go in and see the records from themselves. They could
That's
not
right.
carry a cell phone device or anything like that in the room with them. But it was a specific computer setup that they could use. And that's the only computer setup that was quote unquote secure in order for them to use to see the records. Interestingly enough, the reason for the delay on the release was because they were coding that computer. They had programmers coding that computer and coding all those documents. And that's where a lot of people don't realize, well, you just write a computer code. You know, on something like this, with that many pages and that many documents, you know, I wrote a computer code for a validator for Solana blockchain. One blockchain, one validator took 18 months, one person. Could you imagine how many people it took to write the computer code for that many millions of pages?
Wow.
I'm talking about, I'm doing a computer code that's only 26,000 lines long, and it took 18 months. So this is the reason behind the delay, because what did they do? Here's the kicker, is every congressman that went in there and searched those records, you know what they were searching?
Their name.
Their name. They were searching their name because they knew they were guilty, and they wanted to see if they were in the records or not. And that's how, and they have caught them with their hand in the cookie jar because they're searching their names.
That's exactly what they're doing, because they know who's guilty.
So that's the reason I wanted to go ahead and jump to this one, because everybody was fussing at Pam Bondi for the way they're like, release the names and burn the system. That's what we want anyway. And yes, you feel like that's what you want, but until you realize that some of these people, if they got burned, hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of even thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs will be lost forever.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are key people in here. You know, you've got one person in here, like for instance, that's listed in here. I'll actually show you this gentleman right here that's listed in there is right here. Les Wexner.
Oh yeah, he's all over it.
He's all over it. But now pay attention to who he is. He's the co-founder of Bath and Body Works. He's also the principal for Abercrombie and Fitch, Victoria's Secret, and Lufthansa. So guess what? How many jobs does that man entail? Worldwide, not just here, but worldwide. So if you prove that the money from those companies was part of the funding, and it was, because Jeffrey Epstein was actually his money manager for over 20 years.
That's true. That is so true. And then I have had a thought over and over and over, by going to Victoria's Secrets or Bath and Body Works, you've been supporting this stuff too, because the money eventually got into this trafficking system.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. It did get into there. And so when you're looking at it from that standpoint, you have to understand, if they burn that system like that, guess what? Those companies go out of business. those jobs are lost. And we currently do not have a system in place to absorb that many job losses. And in turn, you would have to look at it this way. Yes, Trump is pushing a new economic plan, and he is pushing that in place because he's trying to take the power away from the Fed. Well, if you crash the entire economic system in that form, do you have control over who's going to rebuild it? Are you sure it's going to be Trump rebuilding it? Are you sure it's going to be the right people in place rebuilding it?
That's true.
So you have to, this is one of those things where you can't just play checkers and take out your opponent's pieces. You do have to play chess in this situation, because you have to get your opponent out without letting him know your next move. You have to understand it from that standpoint. So yes, these people are actually not just implemented, they're actually proven to be in there. So how do you handle that situation? How do you remove these people without crashing economically? Because you have so many powerful people that are involved in this that have been making economic decisions for so many years. You don't think they have fail safes put in place? You don't think they already have people trained to take their place? So that's what we're dealing with at this point.
Okay. I
And
definitely
so this is the
agree. That's
depth
good
that we're
for me.
dealing with. This is the depth of
But I
what
have
we're dealing with.
and one other thought about it, okay?
Mhm.
And I'm coming as a deliverance minister on this thought, okay? These people, because they were a part of it in whatever phase or whatever they were a part of, they all have an unholy alliance together. They're trauma
Yes.
bonded in an unholy alliance. And this is one of the things that God has been showing me about all of this, because they're looking for their names. Their name is in the system, whether they visited the island together or not. They still have an unholy alliance. And intercessors, one of the ways I think we could help now is in our prayer, is for these unholy alliances, for God to move in and do his thing about cleaning up, because we have a system in our nation built on unholy alliances, and it was intentionally done by all of
Mhm.
this false gods on the island, all of the things that they, oh my gosh, did. Wow.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Very much so. Wow. Okay. Anybody got anything else to say about that?
Well, the only thing I want to say is, what do we expect? I mean,
Mhm.
Satan roams around like he's a roaring lion, seeking who he can devour, and he has legal right to be here. But we as Christians and the intercessors have been given, and the body of Christ, the ecclesia, has been given dominion. And what we have in us is the authority that Jesus Christ gave us when we became born again as Christians, to take dominion, just like Adam and Eve were told in the garden. And
Mhm.
Jesus came and redeemed us and gave us back legally what is rightfully ours, spiritually and naturally. And so we can make a difference. It seems so massive and so overwhelming, because I know in my heart that this runs deeper than Jeffrey Epstein, with all this
Mhm.
trafficking and all the things that are going on, and we all know that. But we can take it layer by layer, however the Lord leads us. And I'm sitting here listening to this, and I'm thinking, this is just so massive. I mean, all these people on these big corporations who are behind this trafficking, and Lord knows what else they're involved with. I mean, we know. I mean, we know that we know. Okay, we just know. But then, the Spirit of God is in us, and we have dominion, and it's not an impossible task. We are in a spiritual warfare for the sakes of
Mhm.
humanity and the lives of these children and these innocent victims and other victims that are out there. So, one can put 1,000 to flight, two can put 10,000 to flight. I mean, can you imagine how many demons have to bow to the name of Jesus when the more intercessors come in agreement and pray for for this situation. And so, anyway, I just wanted to throw that in because God is bigger and He's given us dominion, and we need to use the authority that He's given us and pray for these people and let's go to war for them.
That's right. And our
I
prayers
agree.
could make a difference in the system and how the system rebuilds
Mm-hmm.
and keep it, and true people rising up to go to the top of these mountains. And years ago when Johnny Enlow released the 7 mountains, the talk was getting God's people at the top. Well, we need to pray God's people to the top of these
That's
mountains now
right. That's right.
and support them in other ways too. That's really
Mm-hmm.
true.
Yeah.
Okay, 211. A United States, and we're going to continue with Epstein, Democratic Representative Ro Khanna, Kohnna, revealed the name of 6 men in the Jeffrey Epstein files whose identities were blacked out when the records were released to the public. And of course, Lex Wexner, that we just
Mm-hmm.
talked about, was one of the named as a co-conspirator by the FBI, not just in the part of it, but a co-conspirator.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Bath and Body
Via
Works.
Victoria's Secret.
I got to repent for all the times years ago, which I don't shop at neither one no more. But I used to like to go into Victoria's Secret, when I was a young
Mm-hmm.
woman.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting younger by the day, but I do not shop there. Lord, forgive me. I repent.
Well, okay. And Norway's foreign minister on Sunday said a prominent ambassador, Mona Juul, Juul, would step down due to a serious failure of judgment over ties to the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein as part of a growing scandal in the Norway countries and across Europe. So it's not just our country. We got Europe and Norway and all of these countries also tied in here.
And it's not just the men, it's the women too that are involved.
Yeah.
That's the interesting
Yes, it
thing.
is.
Yes,
Very much.
very much. I definitely agree. There's a lot of
Because
women's
I
names
think
that come out.
I think what we're because of all the rhetoric that you hear going on and because of all the uproar, you forget that there were actually boys and girls both involved,
That's
Mhm.
right.
not just girls. They're not just. So it's interesting that the Democrat from Washington, Pramila, actually only chose the women. She didn't choose
Interesting.
any of the male victims. She only chose the female victims. So that shows you the card that they're trying to play. So they're
Yeah.
looking for their back door is basically what I'm saying. They're looking for where their back door is to get out of this.
Interesting. Well, okay, on 211, President Donald Trump is set to announce an executive order directing the Pentagon to buy electricity from coal-powered plants. Bloomberg reported, citing an unnamed White House official, the order will be motivated by the 1950 Defense Production Act, which gives the president power to give private industries direction on the grounds of national security. Any
And that's
comment here?
rightfully so, because I mean, it would only take one or two strategically placed bombs to take down the entire eastern power grid of the United States of America because our power grid is so out of date. So yeah, in the defense of national security, we have to change the way our power grid is structured and how we're doing our power. Because if you look at the current power plants, it's been nothing since, especially since the Clintons were in office. Power plants have been nothing but a money grab to get free grant money,
That's
billions of
true.
dollars of grant money. It's just been a
That
money
is
grab.
really true.
You start up a power plant, you get a bunch of investors together, you do the money grab for the grant money, and then you shut down the power plant for retooling, and then you open it up, you produce power for 6 months, and you shut it down again for retooling, and retooling takes 8 to 10 years. So it's just a money grab is what most of them are. In fact, if you look at the data on the number of power plants that have been built versus the number of ones that are actually in continued production, it's absolutely shocking. And talking about that, the Clintons, their biggest thing is these solar farms.
It is.
The Clinton
Yes.
Foundation owns more solar farms across America than any other business company or industry leader in the world. The Clinton Foundation. So,
Well, and this is something, if you have not researched it, what he's talking about is so true. You need to take time. If you really want to know what's going on with electricity and the power field and all of that, research it, because
mhm.
it is an interesting, just like he said, it's interesting. It's worth the
Yeah,
time to
if
research.
they it is, and if they turned on all every one of the power plants that they actually have that can produce power, our electricity prices would drop to near zero, because it's the same concept. If they actually release the true amount of crude oil that every country had stored, the price of oil would drop below $40 so fast you couldn't catch it. There would be no way to stop it. So it's a money play and a power play. And literally talking about electricity, if you want to know why your power and electricity prices go up, it's because they create an unnatural shortage of electricity. It's not a true shortage of electricity. It's a created shortage.
Wow.
It's so true. Do some research. Okay, on 211, Lisa McCoskey. I think I did her name right.
Murkowski.
That's good. A Republican from Alaska on Tuesday became the first Republican senator to speak out against the House GOP, drafted a bill to require people to show documented proof of citizenship before registering to vote and to show ID to cast a ballot, a top priority of the Trump administration. Any comments here?
Well, just the main one is this: is ever since I was 18 in the state of Mississippi, the little bitty state of Mississippi, 3 million people in the whole freaking state, I had to show an ID to vote. And you go to a place like California or Miami, where you have 7, 8, 9 million people in one city, and you're telling me that they don't have to show an ID to vote, when in Mississippi, with less than 3 million people, you have to show an ID because they want fair elections. But yet, in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, we can find an ID. Is that not weird?
Mm-hmm.
But in a metropolitan city, nobody can get an ID. It's the weirdest thing in the world. I don't understand that. They have all the technology and everything, but you can drive up to somebody's house in the middle of the sticks and the boondocks in Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama, and they have an ID. I don't know how they got it, but apparently they figured out a way to get it. But if you live in New York, good luck on finding an ID. I don't.
Mm.
Okay, it's amazing about these IDs. I know my neighbor across the way always works the poll, and she's known me for years, and I still have to show her my ID. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
you do.
okay. So
If you don't show her ID, you will not get a ballot to vote. And yeah,
you really won't. You really won't.
period.
So that's true. Okay, on 211, the United States intercepted and shot down drones operated by the Mexican cartel that entered the U.S. airspace near El Paso, Texas. The incident forced El Paso International Airport to temporarily suspend operations, and officials confirmed that the military forces used specialized equipment to neutralize the drones that crossed the border. I think this is a good message to the cartel. Don't come invade our space.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? Okay. The House narrowly advanced the SAVE Act, a Republican backed bill requiring the documentary proof of U.S. citizens to register and to vote in federal elections. Barely passed it, but anyway, or advanced it. I don't know if it's been passed yet or not. And on
Yes,
212,
they did. They
Senate
cleared the House. Now it's in the Senate. So we're waiting for to
is in
see
the
what
Senate.
happens with the Senate. Yep.
Okay. Okay, Senate Democrats blocked a funding bill from advancing Tuesday after the House members had already left Washington. Lawmakers are headed for the exit following a failed Senate vote Thursday, but all guaranteeing the Department of Homeland Security shut down early Saturday morning. Anybody got anything there? Okay.
It's what we expected. Nothing out of the ordinary from the Democrats.
Okay. Two Philadelphia men pleaded guilty this week to defrauding the Minnesota House Stabilization Services Medicare program for approximately $3.5 million. Oh my gosh, there's probably so many more people they could continue to find. A mass shooting devastated the small British Columbia town on February the 10th, leaving 9 people dead, including the suspect.
Yeah,
And here
I
we go with
actually
that.
looked into this one. This was kind of interesting because the suspect, the person, the guy that did the shooting, was actually clinically and not right clinically. So, and this here we are dealing with yet another clinically unstable trans person, and we're supposed to accept these people the way they are. You know,
I know. It's a lot to be discussed there.
yeah. When you start
Okay.
getting on medications and you expect, I mean, what do you expect at that point? When you put a person on trans medications, what do you expect? It
True.
changes the brain chemistry. It changes the
Mm-hmm.
way your chromosomes are intended by God to work. And you start playing
That
with
is
that,
so
and
true.
you don't expect to have some kind of negative cerebral function when the wrong chromosomes are coming into your brain, completely opposite of the way God designed it. Yeah.
Yeah, it really makes a lot of sense. And that's a huge thing to look at. Wow. Okay. Newly unsealed Epstein documents, here we go again, show that in December 2018, Epstein's company called LSJE LLC ordered 330 gallons of industrial sulfuric acid delivered to the Little St. James Island. The shipment coincided with the day the FBI reportedly intensified its federal sex trafficking investigation. The chemical is commonly used in reverse osmosis systems, which the island reportedly had, but its corrosion properties have sparked reviewed speculation online about potential evidence destruction.
Mm-hmm.
I've been looking at that one, and apparently, this does get rid of human evidence.
Yes, it does.
So I guess we'll leave that one at that one for you to
Mm-hmm.
look at. Okay. During Homeland Security Committee hearing on February the 12th, Josh Hawley confronted Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison over alleged ties to massive Feeding Our Future fraud scandal. The scheme siphoned nearly $250 million from a federal child nutrition program during COVID. What all have we paid for with our tax monies?
Yeah, and see, that's where I can get on a soapbox where when it comes to these federal programs, when it comes to nutrition programs, when it comes to medical programs for people getting prescriptions that they need, things like that, it's kind of interesting. Years past, it's good to see this because years past, I've seen a lot of good people trying to do something good, trying to be able to start a business that gets the medical products delivered directly to the patients that need it. And what happens? The FBI comes in, takes it over, seizes everything, and guts the business, takes all the money, and goes away with it. But the reason that they do that, and it's been my conspiracy theory for years, is the reason that they do that is because this little small business suddenly became competition for the people that were doing all the illegal stuff. and it started cutting into their illegal funds. And they're working with government insiders in order to get all these funds illegally, because you don't do something like this. You don't do this $250 million fraud program without having government insiders helping you do it, period. So these small businesses that have been gutted and lives have been destroyed by the federal government in order to keep their pockets lined with their illegal fraud, when somebody is actually just saying, hey, we're billing you exactly as the way you have us bill you. We're sending the meds directly to the patients. The patients are getting their meds just like the doctor prescribed. We're getting great reports from the doctor, great reports from the patients, but yet you come in and destroy these people. This is why. The people that do it the right way are the ones that get penalized and get punished.
Wow, that's a big one to look into also.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, a federal judge issued a preliminary injunction preventing Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth from disciplining Senator Mark Kelly, a retired Navy captain. The Pentagon had reportedly considered reducing Kelly's retirement rank or pension after he appeared in a video urging service members to refuse illegal, or what he called illegal, orders.
And all I'm going to say about that is that what we've already said 100 times on here, the judicial system has too much power. When you have a federal judge in a little bitty district and a little bitty hole in the corner of this entire nation can stop the defense secretary of the entire U.S. Army, the man that runs the Pentagon, when a no-name federal judge that's a literal nobody can stop that person, come on. At that point, your system's broken, people. And you got to do a lot of praying to get it back in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The system was supposed to be on checks and balances, and not one system, one part of the checks and balances, original Constitution overpowering the other. It's a check and balance system. But when people started working to get judges into place, they put these judges intentionally to cause corruption.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave that. Okay, Meta's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, has reported a waterfront mansion in Indian Creek Island in Miami for somewhere between 150 to 200 million. The exclusive island home also has his neighbors is Jeff Bezos. So actually, he's another billionaire leaving California to get to a state where the taxes are different. Now, folks, they've been supporting all of this corruption. They've been doing all of this corruption. Now they don't want to pay the taxes.
They don't want to pay the taxes. And now if you look at California and what they have done, here's the funny thing. If you put all of California's millionaires and billionaires together, you come to a total of roughly just over $2 trillion of net worth total, right? Since they've implemented this new tax system, $1 trillion of the billionaires and millionaires have left California just this month, just this past month. So half of their entire billionaires and millionaires have left the state in the past month. Half. And that's
wonder
not
if
the end
Gavin
of it.
Newsom is. Well, wonder if Gavin Newsom is keeping up with that.
I'm
Just
sure
saying.
he is, but not in the way that we think he is. If you pay attention and you look at it the way a Democrat person would look at it, and you would have to look through a very deranged lens, what you're doing is you've corrupted these people. You've got their minds, you've bent their wills, you've played and toyed with their emotions, and then you send them out to spew all of their junk all over the rest of the nation. Think about it from that standpoint for a second. And then they corrupt the rest of the nation for you.
Yeah, I thought about that. So maybe we just need to send them back to California.
Yeah. And then go back to the original map on California where it was an island.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Okay, well, on another note, Marco Rubio is traveling on a 2-day tour in Europe, Central Europe, Slovakia, and Hungary. He's the first Secretary of State to visit Slovakia in 7 years. He is working to strengthen Trump's leadership with these countries and to focus on areas like energy cooperation and independence of energy dependence on Russia, defense and security partnerships, bilateral cooperation on nuclear energy and fighter jet acquisition. Um, Before his tour, he gave a key address at the Munich Security Conference, a major global security forum. He said a new foreign policy vision with Trump's MAGA era. So he's to strengthen the Western civilization, rejecting globalist policies like open borders, excessive free trade, and climate mandates. And he's emphasizing peace through strength. So this has been quite a significant going on with Rubio in these European countries and bringing a whole new side of an alliance with the United States in a different way.
It is, and it's starting to bring out a little bit more than since this has happened. It's starting to bring out a little bit more information as well, to the point that Vladimir Putin is currently in talks with Trump about going back to his international trade of using the U.S. dollar again. So if you have Putin go back and start using the U.S. dollar, then guess what that does between them and China? So, Rubio made a lot of comments during his trip about the mass migration issues that Europe has, and he did not care what they thought about, and he didn't care about their comments. He let them complain all they wanted, and he continued forward. But you also have to look at where Slovakia and Hungary are actually positioned on the map in relation to Russia. If you make them powerful, guess what? You put an extra border between you and Russia.
That's true. That's true.
So
Trump is really playing 3D, 5D, something chess. He really is good at this. Okay, we have Amanda Grace, and she says the Super Bowl exposed. Sonia, this was 2/10/26, if you'll go over that one.
This is really interesting. She goes on, she says, I want to show you something fascinating about the Super Bowl that actually connects to a national agenda. So Super Bowl was on 2/8, which equals 28. 2028 happens to be our next election. On top of that, Bad Bunny decides to use his legal real name in the performance, which is Bentonio Antonio Martinez, Oscar something other.
Ocasio.
Thank you. He, by no accident, brings out Lady Gaga to sing a duet together called Die With a Smile. Now, if you take his real name and you take Lady Gaga, you combined it with the fact that it was on 2/8, which is 28, which is our next election. You can actually spell from their names the last 3 Democratic presidents in office: Clinton, Obama, Biden, and then for 2028, you can actually spell who happens to be one of the front runners for the Democratic nomination, AOC. So
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Okay, so him using his real name has more to do with him having an agenda than that they are trying to project on a certain day that equals 28 that happens to be our next election, and project something into the nation than it has to do with anything else, because from all of this, you can spell Clinton, Obama, Biden, and AOC. That's not an accident, and this is very intentional for the setup, and that's why it was all in Spanish as well, and that's why all these other moving parts come together like they did. So be watchmen right now with all they're doing. And I just want to throw in this, because when I read this, I thought it significant how somehow I haven't looked into it, but I'll just say this. With the Turning Point USA, when Kid Rock came out, and then when he did his last song, he used his real name too, which is Robert James Ritchie. So I don't know if that has one thing or another to do with the other, but when she said he used his real name, Kid Rock used
That's
his real
true.
name to list. So anyway.
It is, it's got something to do. It's got some. So John Ramirez put out one of the best things I've seen about the Super Bowl halftime show. Now, if you know anything about John Ramirez, he spent 25 years in the occult, and he actually said this was probably the most occulted ritual he's seen done on Super Bowls. Okay. Um, So basically, he said that so much was in here, like music controversies to divide people. Excuse me. And he points to the controversy around Bad Bunny. He said this is a changing of the guard in the industry, in the music industry. And it was a ritual to symbolize the transfer of spiritual authority. And he claims Ricky Martin was the former gatekeeper and Bad Bunny is becoming the new gatekeeper. So he said Ricky Martin appearing there is passing now the crown of the gatekeeper to the music industry to Bad Bunny. Okay, who did this all in Spanish. Okay, and the songs were bad. They were bad as Bad Bunny, if not worse. And he noted that the performers were dressed like human forest.
Mm-hmm.
So he said that the whole setup was to represent a ritual being done in a high place, building a spiritual altar, and they went through the preparations for the ritual. So the high places were required for major occultic ceremonies. And he said this is what it was. And Lady Gaga, she said he claims, and I know what he knows what he's talking about, that she came out as the high priestess and she had the authority to activate the ceremony and the ritual. And her blue dress was a symbol of motherhood, but it was also representing that she was a goddess, okay, or
Mm-hmm.
coming out as a goddess. So the Bad Bunny in white represents his initiation. He's been purified to enter the demonic system. Lady Gaga in blue represents her as the mother goddess, or representing the mother goddess in outward purity but inward corruption. He points to Lady Gaga's hands in the position, and he claims that it represented, because she did three fingers and three fingers, it represents the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, saying that Bad Bunny, and we've already had several people to post that, Bad Bunny was initiated into the 33rd degree Masonry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It focuses on Bad Bunny dancing on the poles, but John is saying this is not representing the Puerto Rican blackouts. It's actually representing the connectivity between heaven and earth of channeling spiritual energy, spiritual dark energy. So actually, the performance was a spiritual contract being made. The audience took the bait. The crowd became the spiritual sacrifice because they took the bait. Okay. Lots of people accepted this, and this is what we have to do, is to come into agreement with it. And he said there was an energy exchange between the performers and the crowd. Okay. So basically, excuse my voice, I appreciate. He emphasizes that there was 135 million viewers plus the stadium audience. So he said this made it a global spiritual event. So this was a spiritual event that had a ritual that would be a global influence, okay? And he says believers have to quit drinking their Kool-Aid. We have to recognize what they're doing. And he warns against we don't idolize a culture. God did not create, well, God did create different people, but we don't put idolization, because he did not create us to worship a culture. We're to worship Jesus Christ. Okay. And he says we cannot ignore the spiritual warfare here. Okay. We're supposed to be kingdom people first. So he urges it's time for the church to get up and pray, do renunciations, uproot this spiritual assignment, and cancel all the demonic effects that took place from the Super Bowl. And he ends with a call for a revival. For the streets needs to be people repenting for this, crying out for Jesus, and asking for the Holy Spirit to move. So he said that the halftime show is a spiritual warfare battlefield. Okay. The industry, the music industry is a spiritually controlled system, and the church needs to rise up in discernment, pray, and resistance to what's going on and bring God's hope to the people, which is giving hope for what God wants done with his people. So I think this is a huge thing to look at, but this is John's take on the halftime show. So before we go further, does anybody want to comment on that?
I will actually add something about the Lady Gaga thing, and this is a connection I think a lot of people overlook. Is a lot of these people from Ricky Martin, Lady Gaga, and a lot of these other famous singers that do a lot of these rituals, pay attention to who they're connected with. Almost every one of them are connected to cancer research or cancer institutions in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Almost every one of them are connected with these medical groups in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So I'm throwing that out there because if you start researching it, it kind of becomes a little bit scary on how many of these people, from P. Diddy to Beyonce, people like that, it would blow your mind how many people, their basically their wealth, their money, and all of this. You look at them and it's like, how in the world did they sell that many songs to become that wealthy? And then you start looking and digging in the background, and they're suddenly they went from a nobody to super famous and then super wealthy overnight as soon as they got connected to some type of cancer research or cancer treatment.
That's a good point.
Hmm.
Just a thought,
So
folks. You need to look at this.
there's your big medical yet again. And and on that note, we also have the thing where Russia is releasing the cure for cancer.
Oh,
Have you not
I
seen
didn't
that?
know this. I have not seen
Yes,
that
they
one.
have a cure for cancer with 100% success rate that they're fixing to. Ever since his latest negotiation this past week with Trump, that they're fixing to start releasing to the world, and it is a 100% success rate treatment for all types of cancer. And it's actually been given to their population in the form of a administered and as a preventative treatment, even to actually, because a cancer cell is nothing more than a standard cell in your body that has lost its programming that God put in there, is all it is. The programming has gotten corrupted. It's just like a computer gets corrupted with a virus. The programming changes and you lose control of your computer. That's all cancer is. So what they're doing is their therapy is basically telling your body that any cell that does not have the original coding as your body intended to have, it kills it.
Wow, that's
And that's how
interesting.
it works.
Wow,
So
I have to look into that.
all of that from the halftime show with all these people and from Lady Gaga to Ricky Martin to everybody else involved in cancer and major medical and big pharmaceutical.
Well, that's interesting. Pharmaceutical gets in there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, Amanda Grace also had another prophecy where she tied the opening ceremony of the Olympics, which also was going on at the same week, with the Super Bowl as an Ezra moment with a plumb line falling. So she claims the Super Bowl ceremony, and the opening Olympic ceremonies were deliberately timed. She says both events were meant to influence all the way through the 2028 election. Okay. They were 2 days apart. Amanda does numbers. So she
Mm-hmm.
says the pattern is Olympics 2 plus 2 plus 2, talking about the days, equals 6. 6 days equals to 6. So she says it comes up to the number 666, and it does the same thing for the Super Bowl. Everything was plotted in their events, 2 and 2 and 2. So she sees this as a spiritual warning signal, and she connects the dates to 2026 and then the presidential elections in 2028. She said the focus is Bad Bunny using his full name, and we've talked about this before. She believed he did this as a political prophetic signal, and we also talked about that Kid Rock did this, so there's something very significant. And the show is in Spanish, okay, with national flags, not just the United States, but this is supposed to be an American event with many other flags from other countries, okay. She focused on um, Lady Gaga and the song To Die with a Smile, but she spelled her name backwards, which is Agate. And she points out that King Agate in scripture was the king that Solomon did not kill, but he was where God had told um, Saul, not Solomon, Saul, I'm sorry, Saul to wipe out all of the Amaleks, and Agate was allowed to live of the Amaleks. Okay, it symbolized disobedience and spiritual compromise. So combined with Bad Bunny and this catastrophe theme, she says that Gaga backwards is talking about the Amaleks connecting to King Agate, which I think that is interesting. And die with a smile is people accepting destruction peacefully, okay? And the public being lulled into agreement to accept death and destruction peacefully. They want it to be linked to political and cultural shifts, okay? So basically, she goes on to talk about that Donald Trump and the deleted AI meme that came up, and it shows Barack Obama and Michelle Obama as apes, and we talked about that last week, and it created backlash from both sides. So this took over the news cycle. So nobody was busy; everybody was into this ape thing instead of paying attention to these two different halftime shows or two different rituals and not catching what was going on. So she says that was a diversion to keep everybody in there not seeing what was going on. And she talks about to the book of Ezra, chapter 6, the king decrees restoration to God's house and the treasury being rebuilt. And she says this is a parallel to what's happening in our country now, in our 250th anniversary coming up, where the king has decreed that God's house be restored, which Trump has, and he's rededicating the country back to God, which we've talked about, back to Jesus. And basically, she says this is the book of Ezra. So this is a very good prophecy. If you want to go read the rest of it, does anybody want to comment there? Okay. So there's a lot of prophetic words that's been surrounding the Super Bowl and what's going on. And don't forget, there was also 2 days later a Olympic ritual opening ceremony too. But let's go and let's look at, there's some other things that we need to look at. And let's go to Bo Palmy. And he's in this package. Sonia, can you pick up Bo? God's
Uh-huh.
God's checkmate is wealth transfer time.
Okay. This was on I've got 2 dates here. 2/6/7/26. January the 30th, the Epstein files were released. So the Epstein files were released right on time at 1:42, specifically January the 30th, which is the Julian calendar, is the 17th. Now, so silver outperformed gold by 124% to January the 24th. Look what is going on here. But God, it brought him to the exact day of 21, and it ran for 9 months. It went up 142% relative to gold to January the 24th, and it crashed to the exact day of yesterday, which was February the 6th. February the 6th. But on the Julian calendar, that's why we're moving away from the, I can't say that word. What is that, Shane?
The Gregorian calendar.
Yes, thank you. On the Julian calendar, it was January the 24th, which was 124th. You can't make it up. Guess what? It closed at yesterday. What? Right now, check your phones. The price is $77.70. So right now we've got silver sitting at 77, the chart pattern from 1980, and it ran up. And he said, I had this chart drawn and it literally hit $121 to the exact mark. And then it crashed. We just heard now their game is over. Okay. And they've got to hold it. They can't hold it anymore because why? Because it's 124421 took it up, and 124, it's going to be the next leg to the upside. But this is the life cycle. Remember, death cycle is now over, and we went through the 9-month transition, 9-month, 17th day transition, and now we're on the next cycle, which is now the life cycle, which is the life cycle of life of what? The kingdom of God, the glory of God, the financial blessings beyond measure. So we're at game on right now. Game on. So we're now stepping into this next huge time moment, this time point. So silver, when it takes out 121, what's $3 higher, guess what's coming down? I can only assume since everything else lines up right now. So when it takes out the 121, it goes to 124. The devil's finished. The bankers are done. Okay. So this is the marker that we're watching right now. And if things go down like next week, I believe it's going to go down this month. Shane, you can jump in at any time, but I'm going to keep going till you stop me. Okay. January the 6th. On the Gregorian is actually when they enter the Noah's Ark, and it's actually Christmas Day, and that's the fatal shooting of the ice agent that starts it. There's markers for all of these, but keeping it short. Basically, January the 14th on the clock, you call the Gregorian, was actually New Year's Day. We're in the 40 days right now. 40 days does not end until February the 22nd, 23rd of 2026. Because it's always sunset. So until the 24th of February, which just happens to be February the 10th. And on the Julian calendar, you buy a clock. What do they typically point to? 10 and 2. 10 and 2. 10, we'll see now. This is important because this 40 days is the death cycle, which I believe is where we're going to see the angel of death. So between today and the 24th on the Gregorian, we'll most likely see the angel of death. And that's important because the angel of death, even whether it happens or not, I don't know, okay? But it would make sense that it would be likely in the 40-day cycle. We'll see it again, okay? It doesn't matter, even if it doesn't, because why have until the 4th of July for the day of vengeance to happen? Or he says, are you with me? So in other words, the day of vengeance, it could happen anytime in the year. So we're at that year. We're at that year right now. We're just waiting for the next day. But it's interesting. He says, I'm looking at this because of the timeline. February the 24th, and then Purim is right after that. Purim is critical because this is the third Purim in a row, which has never happened before with a blood moon on it. He goes on to say the stage for a big, massive event as we head into Purim. So we shall see. But again, nothing, this is key. Nothing will change in this world without an act of God. And he goes on to say, just to wind this up, and then we can talk about it. And then you've got 10 days go by. And that sets the stage for what? For the Red Sea miracle. And so that'll be interesting because you know what, with this timing here, 10 days later takes us into March. And he says, my charts on silver and gold are showing a massive. So we're going to have a jump. Whatever happens here in February is nothing compared to what nothing is about even goes down in March on the precious metal charts. So there's going to be a massive secondary explosion in March, which is going to be off the charts. So the water keeps rising from the deep another 150 days or 110 days to make it 150. Okay. And that's Trump's birthday. Like, what is going on here? Like, this is crazy. And then for 220 more days, they don't get off the ark until January the 20th, 2027, which is exactly 2 years to the day of Trump's inauguration. Exactly 2 years to the day of inauguration. And then the prophecy goes, Kim Clement, and then an Esther will arise in the middle of the presidency to heal a nation. Now let that sink in, because the last thing we do now is healing. Last thing we need right now is healing. We need vengeance. We need God to do what he needs to do. So then we need the healing afterwards. Okay. This is how the things, what's God gonna come heal right now? When half the people want trouble, people want Trump dead. And you see what I'm saying? God's going to do things to shake people to the core. And when he shakes them to the core, then they go, oh, then they're going to wake up this. There's a great awakening that's coming. So again, Purim is very interesting, and we'll see what happens here.
So, Shane, what do you think? I think it's interesting that we're having blood moons for the last 3 Purims. That's a big message.
It is. It is. And as far as what I see happening here is exactly what we talked about last week with the investor requesting hard silver, actual physical silver in the place of his, and as far as his payout for his investment, is exactly what I told you guys would happen. They would fight tooth and toenail to keep that price from going out of control until they could fill that order. And if you pay attention to the silver charts, you will see spikes up and spikes down all throughout this past week, where the prices have tried to break out of that range, but they've been basically kept under control and manipulated to stay within a range that was somewhat attainable. And so if you look at it from that standpoint, yes, you're going to have a lot of pinned up orders. It's just kind of like a volcano waiting to erupt. You've got all of that pressure that's pinned up on the orders, but the difference is right now with silver, you've got buy and sell orders simultaneously. So when that cap is taken off, you could have an explosion down before you have an explosion up. I just want to warn people of that. You can look at a prophetic word and you understand the prophet is looking at the end result, what God sees happening as the end result. In the middle of getting there, if you're investing in silver, understand if you have buy orders where a lot of people are buying into a particular, especially in the commodity market, into a particular thing, it's interesting. The reaction a lot of times of buy orders causes the price to drop instead of go up. Why? Because there's a spread between where you buy and where the person you're buying from sells. So both people have to make money. So the first person that makes money is the person that actually is selling that product. So therefore, that price drops. So when they sell that product, they're in profit. So I'm just giving a warning to, this is a warning to go out there and say, hey, this thing could spike down to $62 before it hits 124. We could easily see that happen. Same thing's going on with gold. Gold has been holding its own, but the reason it's been holding its own is because that's still, even though we're off the gold reserve, a lot of people still depend on that on that gold price in order to support the US dollar. So understand gold's been reacting differently than silver. Absolutely has. We're at $5,000 an ounce with gold still. We went to 5,100 and change this past week. Gold actually went significantly higher on the scale than silver did this past week because they are manipulating the price of silver currently. So if I was out there buying silver, I would do it literally a 1% at a time. Right now, yes, you can get silver spot price at about 86, 87 bucks. But, in reality, I would be really, really careful I would buy it in small increments. Gold right now is a lot more secure, a lot more stable. It's reacting the way the market is supposed to react, with people backing their investments that they're taking out of different companies from the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ and putting it into gold for stability to go back into different companies in the market, because you have to understand there's always this trade going back and forth. So if you're investing in Microsoft or whatever, and you're ready to take your investment out, a lot of people unwrap that investment and they place it in gold temporarily. And then they pull it back out of gold to invest in whatever other company or whatever other stock or dividend that they're going to invest in. So understand it from that investment standpoint. And right now, silver has been so volatile. Investors are very, very, very leery of using silver as a stable jumping off point into their next investment. So they understand that the price is being manipulated. So I would say proceed forward with silver with the same caution. I'm not telling you to miss the boat. Don't miss the boat. But you need to have a lot of prayer and intercession on how you're going to go forward investing in silver, because it is extremely volatile. And like I said, when they do take that cap off and they fill that order and they bought the silver that they needed to buy in order to fill those orders, we could see a huge spike down before we see it go back up. And I will actually say the same thing in relation to cryptocurrency. Look at cryptocurrency like silver right now. You have your stable markets that you're good with. And that's our gold, the gold versions of cryptocurrency. But then you have those unique things that are very stable coins, but they're reacting like silver right now because they have oversold those using ETFs when they put cryptocurrency on the ETF market, and they oversold all that paper. Now they're having to fill orders, and people are wanting the actual real crypto in the place of their orders. So they're having the same issue right now in the crypto market as well. So, and in fact, we had one investor, they could not fill his order on Bitcoin, and he actually put in a short on Bitcoin to the tune of about $40 million. But he did that short 40x, which is 40 times 40 million. So he shorted on the paper 40x, 40 times 40 million. And he actually did that short. It didn't happen at exactly at one price, because that's a lot of paper to be shorting at one time. It happened over multiple prices. So his dollar cost average on that one was roughly about 69,000. We're currently at 68,000. So that would mean that he is currently up on his investment roughly about $13 million.
Wow. And couldn't fill his orders, but he got up, right?
So they couldn't fill it. They couldn't fill his orders. So he doubled down. Is what he did. So he plans on either making them pay or breaking them. So it's been a very interesting between silver and crypto. They're both reacting the same. So when you hear the prophetic word about silver going to 124, I'm the one that's been sitting over here saying the whole time, Bitcoin, we're going to pass that 124 with 124,000 with Bitcoin. I could easily see Bitcoin hitting 150,000, but I'm also the one that sits on the sidelines and says, you know what? I would absolutely expect Bitcoin to bump 58,000 in order to fill those orders, in order for these companies to fill those paper orders before it went there. So, and that's the reason I have 58,000 as a marker, is because that was actually the marker, one of the original markers that actually got us to that that 120,000 range with Bitcoin before. So the 58,000 was the key marker that got us to actually, that's where the huge order blocks came in to actually get us to that 120,000 range. So that's where I'm looking for that order block to hit again. So just like God designed, is kind of interesting. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything works in cycles. The markets work in cycles as well. So I'm looking for a repetitive cycle and being able to understand how God's cycles work and even how they work in the markets. Not just understanding how they work in politics, how they work in the everyday life, how his cycles work in your life. It's very important to understand that God's cycles actually function in the economy as well.
That's true. That's very true. That's good. Okay, so we have a video from Georgia we want to show you. And while we've got Georgia on the mind, while we're pulling up this video about something, a news clip out of Georgia that took place. Okay, I'm going to mention Marjorie Taylor Greene was interviewed by Clayton and Natalie Morris. And so we'll be getting up the video. And Marjorie Greene had her take with Clayton and Natalie about the Epstein files. And what really stood out to me, and you can go watch this and see what stands out to you, okay? But she accused the U.S. justice system of illegally redacting names, deleting public records, and protecting powerful people. Marjorie claimed that the FBI records are real, not rumors, and she mentions FBI reports needs to be looked at again about the Epstein jail footage. Okay, she says there's a lot of cover-ups for elites going on in all of this Epstein situation that needs to be looked at. Okay. She says that Pam Bondi answers to Trump. And so she says, really, Pam's doing what Trump says. Now, again, you can weigh out what you want to weigh out here. I'm just telling you to go look at this. She describes Washington as a political industrial complex. And she said you must follow party lines or face punishment. And she said the tactics are blocking bills, media attacks, blacklisting are primary threats. She says those are some of the things that you would face in the DC system. Okay. And she says both sides serve the system. She points to both Lindsey Graham and Mike Johnson, and she calls them both weak and compromised. She also, in this, links Epstein's to COVID policies, economic manipulation, and industrial favoritism. So I just thought you might like to see this. This is the Georgia interview with Georgia. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene's interview with Clayton and Natalie Morris, and I think it's worth going through. And definitely, people are talking about Epstein. Okay, anybody want to add something there? Shane, do you have the video about the voting in Georgia? Okay, can we show that one next? We want you to be aware of this.
Fraud lawsuit filed by Sidney Powell in Georgia details the use of counterfeit ballots to boost Joe Biden. An affidavit filed with Powell's lawsuit reveals that Georgia's counterfeit ballots could be identified by darker watermarks on them. The witness says such ballots were printed on different paper, and the watermarks are dark gray as opposed to transparent on the real ballot. Almost 100% of to Biden. A fraud lawsuit filed by Sydney.
So it's interesting as they're relooking at all this, almost everything they're finding goes to Biden.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying, I don't think the 2020 election is over. I don't know what y'all think. Anybody want to comment there? Well,
no, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. It's what the conspiracy theory we said the whole time, election fraud, but we were conspiracy theorists. But here it is in black and white right there in front of you,
It is.
literally.
And
apparently it was too much black and not enough white. The watermarks were too dark.
They were. How about that? They made their
Yeah.
mistake. Okay. Let's look at, we have another video I want to show you, and this is by Robin Bullock. And this is something to really think about. It's just a thought. So I think it's true. So listen to this if you will play it.
I was looking at a DNA strand with all this in my mind now, and the Lord had me straighten it out to where it's not spiraled anymore. Just straighten it out. I found a DNA strand straightened out online, and I saw it. The first thing on my mind, I said, this looks like a piano. They even had some of the keys colored. I said, this is a keyboard. I gave it to Gino, who plays keyboard with us. I said, slide it up there and just play it. He sent me back, and I've got the recordings on my phone, and it was the most beautiful sound. Wow. So your blood is playing music all the time. When the Lord said his blood cries to me from the ground, in the same translation of the Hebrew wording, one will say something like to this effect, it sings to me. In other words, your blood is a DNA code with the song of God placed in it.
Wow. Now that's Robin on Flyover Conservative, Stacy and David Whited. But that's just a thought. That's just something you need to think about. Think of all of our things in our body, and we're playing a code. Wow. That's awesome. Totally awesome. Okay, Sonia, you want to summarize anything you see prophetically?
I'm a code breaker. I'm going to break the code. I was sitting there listening to Robin, and I'm thinking, well, if my blood's singing all the time, no wonder I sing. I could make a song out of anything. It doesn't matter. But anyway, the Bible said that a merry heart doeth feel like a medicine. So I have to make a joyful noise unto the Lord. So that's really good. There's just so much going on. It seems like when we know this, the last since President Trump went back into office, things have escalated at such a degree that we're seeing things being exposed, and it's happening every day. There's something coming out every day, and sometimes it's 2 or 3 things a day that are coming out. So prophetically, what I'm seeing is that we're on God's timetable, that God is moving in a miraculous way. And we just got to keep up with him, and we've got to move into the future, like Robin Bullock's always talking about, how God always moves into the future. Some of these things have already been taken care of in the spirit realm. They're just manifesting now on the earth. And I believe the great judge of the universe is judging all things, and there will be justice. But I believe that a lot of these things that we're seeing there is some deep things, but I think there's things that are deeper that we've got to reach down as God pulls out the roots of this Babylon system to rebuild what God wants for the great harvest to come in, for the great revival to take place. And we are experiencing some things here and there with revival and God moving, and he's moving all the time. But I believe it's going to be to the masses, to where it's evident to the lost and to those that are in the occult, those that are serving the enemy, that serving their father, the devil, And I believe there's going to be a big turnaround where there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get born again, going to get set free. And that's why the deliverance ministry and the inner healing ministry is so important in this time, because people are coming out of that. And so, saying all that, I know that was a mouthful, but it was just what was on my heart. I just want to encourage everybody to stay strong. Keep your eyes focused on Him.
I agree. And I will tell you this, talking about in God's timing, and at the beginning of, before we kicked off, when we kicked off the night, we were talking about Genesis and Genesis 1:26, where He gave man dominion.
Mm-hmm.
We started that out tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned God's timing, and talking about the code in the DNA, the actual code for nearly the entire Bible is actually written in Hebrew in Genesis 1:1.
Mm-hmm.
Right down to Jesus's death on the cross and resurrection is all in Genesis 1:1, in that 1:1. You understand that? So when you look at that and you understand Genesis 1:1, it says, in the beginning, He created the heavens and the earth. So what did He do? In the beginning. That means God established time.
Mm-hmm.
So we are working on God's time. And there gives you, as intercessors, your authority to establish God's time, because He established it at the beginning time, on His time. Then He established the heavens, which is space. And then He established the earth, which is matter. And then that's when we go right into the fact that the next thing He established was the firmament. The firmament was the boundaries. And we talk a lot about boundaries. We talk a lot about the boundaries of the United States. We talk a lot about the boundaries. He established the boundaries. And then after establishing time, space, matter, and boundaries, He established boundaries before He created man. And then when He gave man boundaries, the Garden of Eden, and He gave man dominion.
Mm-hmm.
So this is all prayer points to understand unlocking the biblical code in order to pray that God's boundaries are reestablished, God's time is reestablished. And we have the authority and dominion given us by God over the space and the matter in order to do that.
That's right.
That's great. That's a
Well said.
super word. It is. So we'll tell you a little bit about what's coming up at Global Vision Faith Center, if you'll bring that up, Shane. We have a conference where we're going to focus on praying for our nation, our towns, our cities. Norman Pasquale, I'm sorry I pronounced your name wrong, will be there. He is part of the National Faith Advisory Board to the White House. We will also have different political people there that we're going to discuss what we as intercessors can do and how to best serve them through prayer and even putting feet to the church. So put that on your calendars, March the 20th and 21st. So we appreciate you being here tonight. It's been an exciting prophetic table talk. I hope you got a lot out of it. You've got prayer points. You've got things that you know what to look for. And we will join you next week. Give us a thumbs up. Remember, a thumbs up. Share the program. Okay. Anybody else?
Shalom,
Good night,
shalom.
y'all.
Good night.